Hi, welcome back, y'all. It's T-Ty back with another video review of Netflix's Painkillers. This is episode 5. So let's get to it. First, I want to send our condolences to the Stevenson and Williams family. Matthew died at the age of 24 due to an Oxycontin overdose. So rest in peace, you guys. So this episode takes us back to 1950. That's the opening up, where we see Richard Sackler as a nephew, little kid. Him and his dad comes in. His dad is adamant to show Arthur about all the Tiffany jewelry that he bought, but Arthur quickly reminds him about the legacy that he actually wanted to set. So he takes Richard under his wings and tells his dad to take all the Tiffany jewelry back, because most of the things that you want to be known for is your name, all the money put in the art museums and stuff like that. So the second scene we see Brownlee and U.S. Attorney Edie Flowers. So they basically picks up from the last episode, when they're reviewing the hearing in Maine, where they're trying to find ways that they can incriminate Richard Sackler and Purdue Pharma for lying about not knowing about all the prescriptions to patients, causing them to become addicts and causing them to wreak havoc on their communities. So Purdue Pharma sent 3 reps from the U.S. Attorney's Office. They're going to help close the case. So this is what they plan on doing. So after they see they lied about the hearing at Congress, they're ordered and subpoenaed to hand over all their documents. And they say it's over like millions of pages, but they got to go strategically through everything because they actually want to find the law. So once they lied, we now have the subpoena to, see all their documents, which will help build Flowers' case against Purdue. So Molly, after visiting the college, she's introduced to the ins and outs of how to canvass different pharmacies. So they go to Dr. Cooper's office with Shannon. And then outside, when they pull up, they see is a bunch of mothers still protesting the death of Jess, who died at the age of 15 from an opioid overdose. They're still protesting. They go in Dr. Cooper's office. And the last meeting that Shannon had with Dr. Cooper he was kind of being very touchy-feely towards her, give her some Tiffany diamond bracelet. So Molly is there basically to deteriorate the attention from Shannon to her. So to my knowledge, Molly's only brought to the office because Shannon don't really want to deal with this guy. She don't really like how invasive he is. So she's pushing him on it. Molly comes in confident, like she's ready, eager to learn, as all the new hirees are. So when Shannon is visiting Dr. Cooper's office, they're still protesting, and they see Dr. Gregory outside. Dr. Gregory was one of the main people who told Shannon she was a drug dealer. So all these things that she's remorseful for, you can see the panic on her face. When we see Glenn is still relapsing, he made himself look crazy when he went to Jack's house. He made himself look crazier when he didn't answer the phone when Lil, his wife, was calling. So now you see how frantic and addicted he is, and how he really moves. So this particular morning, he goes to his wife's house. He asks to see the daughter, but in the condition that he's in, she's denying him all entry. She cursed him out, threatened to call the police on him. He makes this lame excuse of getting some shoes. But really what I think, he's trying to find more things to pawn or find reasons to get money, because he want to keep financing his addiction. Long story short, she ends up throwing his boots out to the side. He doesn't really want the boots anyway. He heads over to Dr. Hartman's office and gives him a visit. The doctor visit doesn't go as well as planned. Dr. Hartman basically, sometimes he will, coddle Glenn, give him prescription after he give him a sob story, but being in a state of mind that Glenn's in right now, he opt to give him like a alternative drug, which is methadone. It's a synthetic opioid. Being how disruptive and belligerent Glenn is acting, he's denied the prescription. That's when going this crazy tirade, storms out of the office. He goes out to his work of business and he steals all the tools, right? He goes and tries to pawn them off. Guy is giving him a hard time, you basically down on your luck, I can tell, especially when he took his wedding ring off. So they negotiate something around $390. So he takes this money and try to find ways to get him some opioids. And this is where you see the guys trying to cut in line, and security guard is basically making sure he knows his $200 fee to see the doctor, and it's $200 to pay him. He comes up short, talking about $80. The man was like, man, look, you need to go on. You acting weird. Case closed. Anytime you get desperate enough to sell your wedding ring or anything, you know you're desperate. So after he got denied the entry, he goes back to his car to see if he can find some more collateral things. He ended up getting robbed by some guys outside of his car. They takes all his money, and now he's really back to square one of his addiction and financing. This scene, you see the panic, but he's not really taking it serious. He's getting visits from his uncle Arthur, which he tells him, you know, don't mess up my legacy. All these things you need to handle head on, personally, at the personal level. Try to find ways to minimize this big Congress meeting, all the audits of his company, all the subpoenas that him and his staff have to go through, trying to find ways and validate compensating his business adventures, right? One thing they vow on to do is not settle. Don't have no settlement. If you do a settlement, you basically ratting on yourself and you trying to settle out of court, right? They don't want that procedure to be done with their company. So you go to phase one, led by U.S. Attorney Brownlee and Flowers. So phase one, there was to visit Purdue. So they go and visit Purdue. And Purdue are met by 3 of the U.S. Attorney reps. So they basically are trying to negotiate a deal with them. Being that they're untransparent with the negligence of how they operate the drugs and how easy access people get to them, one of the things they want to do is put the truth on top of the labels so you can see the side effects, the addiction rates, all that. And another thing that they want to do is they want them to invest in $2 billion to Virginia, because this is where it took place in Virginia. And another thing they want to do is have a public apology to all of those families involved, all those hurt families involved, and they want some accountability, basically. Purdue basically disregards everything they talk about. They offer them $10 million instead of the $2 billion, and they come back again saying, you know what, because you're trying to lowball me, we want $5 billion. So they request $5 billion instead of the $2 billion, because they know they can afford it, being that they send all the drug dealers, aka recruiters, to different parts of Virginia, recruiting and coercing these different pharmacies to sell and prescribe opioids. After the result of this, the U.S. Attorney Brownlee feels, you know, pissed off. Like Agent Flowers says, you know, they try to handle him like he's some cheap goat and try to lowball him. So this makes him want to fight any harder. So he tells U.S. Attorney, they all leave so they can go to phase two. Phase two is when they go really into the deep depths. Phase two, they set up a call meeting where they're trying to find all the ins and outs, or maybe find a mole up in the company who will give us some inside information about all the falsified documents. They need someone on the end so they can actually testify with a disposition role against the case in Purdue. So after calls and calls, they end up contacting Debbie. Debbie is like the receptionist at Purdue. She actually was the one who called Shannon to come to Connecticut when they was doing this big, you know, elite toppers flight. So when they talked to Debbie, she seemed like she wanted help, but at the same time you could tell she's scared, so she hurry up and hangs up the phone. In between this, it's kind of like a parallel scene. This is one of the first parallel scenes you see. She actually goes into an office meeting, and she's basically like a script writer. She's writing different notes inside of the laptop, taking notes of the meeting that they have about how they're gonna battle this Congress situation. She gets yelled at, "Why are you taking notes so many times?" And they get into this big spaz because everybody in panic mode. One of the things that she does, she actually says called oxycoffins. So that's one of the things, the red flags that they actually see. They get this big argument. They're escorted out because they started arguing. And Debbie ended up calling them back because she's in distress mode right now, being how she got embarrassed in front of coworkers. And all the stuff that she's wrote, she's been complaining about the company. They threw a coffee pot at her head, like stuff like that. Work-related abuse, bad work conditions. And she actually talked about a memo that she actually sent to staffs, the doctors, and it basically was a synopsis of how deadly and addictive. She got street prices, she got scripts on how to go to different doctors and pharmacies to actually get people to actually get validated and okay to take these prescribed medicines. So he ended up calling back, and they end up setting an interview, a disposition interview, where she can actually testify against Purdue because of the wrongdoing they did to her and other patients. So this will help Flowers in their case. So the whole staff, they're excited they actually got someone from the inside. They actually found the mole, right? I personally think the way she was acting, I was like, maybe something's gonna happen to her. She kept looking over her shoulder when she hung up the phone, and she's just really jittery and really scared, right? After her phone conversation with Flowers, she informs them that, they can meet in Connecticut the next day for this meeting, and it's a perfect time because everybody's going to be in Miami. In Miami, they're going to be in this, it's like a conference propaganda party, basically. He's trying to sugarcoat everything, make everybody look from the outside. Everything is cool. We're going to go to Miami. We're going to have this nice trip. He gives this watered down speech. They say how much they love Richard, and he influences the whole room to keep pursuing drugs. There's no need for nothing to worry about, right? So the day comes where they actually goes to meet Debbie to testify against Purdue, but Debbie is nowhere to be found. They call her phone. She's not answering. They check in hospitals and police stations to see if they have any records of her, if anything happened to her. They end up finding nothing, but they end up knowing that she had a 30 pill a day addiction. That's how addicted she was. And she was actually at a urgent care trying to get more with this whole sob story, just like Glenn used to try to get these doctors to prescribe them with medicine. But long story short, she was unreliable. So they was back to square one. We're trying to charge Purdue for wrongdoings. We get Glenn drives her back up to Jack's place because Todd still ain't coming home. He still feels uncomfortable. The house is divided. Everybody in different places in their life. Lil and the daughter's at home. We have Glenn, he's isolated from the family. And then we have Ty, the son. He's actually staying with a family member, but he comes with his sob story, basically, because he just got beat up, he just got robbed. So he down on his luck. And one thing he does is he goes to manipulate Ty. He goes to manipulate Ty by lying to him, saying how he loved him so much, how he's ready to stop it. So he brings Ty to tears once he breaks down. And this is where the manipulation comes in, because one thing he does is, how can I help you? He's like, I need some money. I need something for opioids. And this is when Ty is like pissed off and, like you came here trying to talk about you want some help, but you really want money. You really want some cash. It's just pathetic the way he treated Ty in this moment. It's like he using his weakness to try to build his own self up. But then at the same time, he's utilizing different talking points. This is a parallel scene. We get to see how Shannon is introduced to this guy named Jay. And she says, as soon as you meet him, you look familiar. Jay is actually the U.S. attorney. He was over the Congress whole Purdue investigation. He ended up working for Purdue. So again, this is another rock that, or I should say dead end, that Flowers hit, because the same person who tried to start the investigation is the same person that turned and started working for Purdue, just like Curtis Wright did. Because Curtis Wright, he used to work for the FDA. He ended up working for Purdue Pharma. Now, the U.S. Attorney, Jay, I think it's Jay Alexander, he ended up working for Purdue Pharma also. So clearly Purdue Pharma can just pay people out with the drop of a dime, drop of a hat, and people just going to forget their pride, integrity, and their intuition. So within this scene, you get to see the ins and outs of Shannon getting introduced to opioids by Brittany. And one of these scenes, you see how the Tiffany bracelet made her way to Molly. Molly's one of the new reps. So basically Molly's like, don't try to act like you didn't try to throw me on to him because you didn't want him. He ended up giving me, and I slept with him. She's like, you didn't have to do that. I have no intentions of you doing that. But this is the underlying language that Brittany and those recruiters have. It's like they have to use their sexuality in a way to feel as though they can close deals. But Shannon felt remorseful. And at this time, you see Glenn going back and forth trying to detox himself, because he ended up going to steal some Propel water, which is like a dehydration remedy. And, he takes himself back to work. And in the midst of these two scenes, you get Shannon getting addicted, getting introduced to it. And then you get to see how Glenn is actually dealing with it. He even told Dr. Hartman, you looked me in my face with my wife and told me about it, but you see how damaging it caused, but now you want to deny me it. So he's trying to isolate and detox himself at work. Shannon is at this party in Miami. She's get to see how the drug is like weighing on her body. We will commend Glenn for actually trying to stop and recognize his addiction. So he's trying his hardest to stop it. That 1% that Dr. Hartman told him about addiction is clearly higher than that. And he's really reaping the benefits of deception. Shannon is going through an out consciousness as she's watching. She's seeing how her co-workers are being in sexual positions. She's seeing how, even though she's under the influence, from her perspective, the way the cinematography is, you get to see how she's looking at, every time she turns her head, is something like flabbergasting, something that's crazy. And one of the title from last week's episode was called Jesus Gave Me Water. And in this scene, you get to see how Glenn is trying to purify his face with it because he want to clean himself. Shannon is in the pool trying to clean herself, trying to purify herself. She ended up dropping in the pool, falling in, and she's like in this trance. Luckily, somebody came in from the staff and they, pulled out the water. She seemed as though she was unconscious. She was still in and out of it, but at the same time, you can tell she was scared, but you can't really react to it because you're not really under the right influence, because you're unhinged at this point. So in this episode, we got to see how the brick walls that Ancient Flowers and Brownlee just kept hitting. Every time they thought they was close enough to close the case, something always pulled them back. Every time they inched up to get a little more closer, they end up pulling out. So we're trying to build this case in different phases every week. Purdue versus the U.S. Attorney General's office. Hopefully, next episode, we actually get to some type of conclusion. I have a feeling that Shannon is not going to be as with the shits, I should say, with Purdue as she was before, being that she got to see what it feels like to be on drugs. She got to see the remorse that she felt when she saw Gregory looking at through the window when they went to Dr. Cooper's office. And she actually got to see how sexualized they are with how they work and how they interact with different men at the job. So all these things are going to feel like it's going to cause her a huge factor with how she moved forward. And I think Ancient Flowers and Brownlee are going to be a little more, I should say, organized, or how they're going to face off Purdue and actually finding some credible source to prosecute the whole stuff of Sackler in it. This ain't got nothing to do with the video, but it kind of does. This episode was titled Hot, Hot, Hot. And they talk about Tiffany jewelry and all that. And Beyonce is going to be in town today. Today is September 27th, and the Renaissance Tour will be here in New Orleans. And it was just, this episode just reminded me of the song Heated off the Renaissance album. So I know it ain't got nothing to do with this, but yeah, it's hot, hot, hot. And it got Tiffany all through the episode, but yeah, y'all be careful if you go be out there. I can't be out there, fortunately. I won't be able to see Beyonce. But if y'all go up out there, just be safe, be careful, enjoy yourself, and if you can, have a good time, y'all. But thank y'all for watching my video. Thanks for clicking on it. We got one more episode, episode 6. So I'll see you guys next week. Or not even next week. I'm gonna see you later this week. All right. Thank you for watching. Peace.